Okay folks, in this video we're going to talk about what to do when you go to turn that gate valve, globe valve, point of use valve, and it starts leaking uncontrollably from the stem and you start freaking out. Now the first thing to know is, yes, it's your fault. You put your hands on it. At least that's what my customers tell me. Everything was fine until you touched it. I'm going to talk about a gate valve, I'm going to talk about a globe valve, I'm going to talk about a point of use valve, the differences, and what you can do to fix that drip coming out of that little packing nut. It's not really a big deal, but if you don't know what you're doing, it could turn into a little bit of a catastrophe. So stick around. So what do you do when you go to turn the valve and it starts dripping out of the packing nut here? Well, initially you do what I do and what everybody else does, is to go out and get yourself an opener wrench or a small pipe wrench. And initially, what I would do is I would come here to the packing nut and I will try to tighten it. Now, in mild cases, you can go, maybe 1/8 of a turn. You could go 1/4 of a turn. In some instances, you may have to go, 1/2 a turn. And if by going 1/4 turn it stops, great. If you have to go a 1/2 a turn, great. Generally, once that stops, what I do is I will turn this. I will turn it full on and full off. And if I see that the drip has stopped, that's pretty much it. But if you tighten it 1/8 of a turn, 1/4 of a turn, 1/2 turn, and the thing isn't getting any better, then it's going to be time to take this packing nut off, and we're going to have to replace the packing in there. Now, some valves, depending upon the manufacturer, they have graphite packing in there. At least most of them do. Cheaper valves, imported valves, they have a little rubber washer in there, which dries out quicker than the graphite. And you have some choices when it comes to choosing what you're going to use to pack the valve. I'm old school. I carry graphite packing with me. This is graphite packing. It's readily available at the home centers. And actually, I purchased this morning for this demonstration. And I got this at Lowe's. So there it is. But I purchased it commercially for my plumbing supply. I get it on big rolls. And if you're the type of person who would rather use Teflon, well, they make rope Teflon. Now, they make the rope Teflon and the graphite in 2 thicknesses. This is the lesser of the 2. I just find I can get it in there better, but you're welcome to use the thicker version. And this is the Teflon version. Again, I got this from Lowe's this morning. So typically what you would do is, I know there are a lot of videos on YouTube telling people, to go shut the main water supply off. Now, you can if you want. I generally, to pack a valve, I don't do that. What I will do is I will shut the valve off. But I will make sure it's fully off. See, if you leave the valve fully open and you back off this packing nut, it's going to drip. I mean, it'll drip pretty well. But if you turn the valve off and the valve has integrity, meaning it's not going to pass any water, then I wouldn't worry about it. So at least I wouldn't go and shut the main water off. You may have to do that, but initially I don't do that. So with that said, then I'm going to come in here with my adjustable or pipe wrench, whatever you happen to have with you. We'll get that on there. You want to bite that square because you don't want to egg shape that nut, and we'll back that nut off. And you may have to hold on to this to make sure it's shut and make sure it doesn't start to open. Some of these are really sticky, and as you start to loosen the packing nut, the stem will actually start to turn. So you hold on to it as such, and you back this nut off. Now this is coming off. This is a new valve. Bear in mind, when you're under a sink and you're in tight quarters, things are not going to go as smooth as they're going up here on the bench. So you want to bear that in mind. So there is the part where the stem goes into the valve, and here inside, you can see that's graphite. I can tell by looking at it. I can see that shine on there. And essentially what you would have to do, initially, what you can do, rather than take all of that out, you can start by taking, again, the graphite, the Teflon, whatever turns you on, and you could do one round, snip it off with the scissors, and proceed to put this nut back on and see if you can get that packing. You know, you push on it and you tighten that. You go all the way down until it's tight enough, so to speak. Then you go through the motions of opening and closing the valve. And you see, you know, if that has stopped the water. And as you open and close the valve, you can actually, what I do is, while I'm opening and closing the valve, let me just make sure this is closed. As I'm opening and closing the valve, I am turning and turning and turning to make sure that this is snug. And I can feel the more you turn, the harder or the tighter the stem is going to get. And if by putting one round of graphite in there or one round of Teflon in there does the trick, hey, you know what, guys, you're done. That's it. Open up the valve, the fully open position, and you're finished. Now, if you find, on the other hand, that it's not happening, you may have to go in there and, again, you want to make sure this is shut. Now, this valve opened all the way. That's shut. We take this off. And you go in there with an awl, a knife, a pick, something sharp, and you get all that stuff out of there. And then the sequence would be, you would start maybe 2 rounds, 2.5, 3 rounds at a time, and you would start, and then you would whack that nut up all the way, then back it off. Then again, you proceed to fill up the cavity, if you will. It's going to be very hard to do all at one shot, so I would do it in increments. I would do maybe 2 or 3 rounds, whack that nut up, again, while holding on to the valve because you don't want it to open. Back the nut off, another 2 or 3, or another 1 or 2, whatever it's going to be, until you get that built up to the point where there's a substantial amount of packing in there and you're satisfied that it's going to work. Once you get it to that sweet spot, you'll be able to tighten that up, open up the valve, and you're going to be done. Now, if the valve doesn't hold water, you're probably going to have to shut the main water supply off. I mean, I've been in situations where I couldn't get the water to stop while I was packing it. But again, you know, I do this for a living, so I'll get a bucket, I'll shove it under there, I'll go through the steps. Anything to avoid shutting the water off. Because when you shut the water off, you know, and then you have to go to all the fixtures, bleed all the air out of the system. You have to drain down the system. If it's a multi-family house, it becomes an issue. So I try not to shut the main water off if I don't have to. And that's pretty much, you know, the simple version of how to get the water to stop. A, you got to tighten it initially. And B, if if A doesn't work, you go to plan B and you're going to have to pack the nut. That's pretty much it, guys. It's not no brain surgery here. We're talking about stopping the water, from coming out of the stem. And again, that's pretty much the story. What I want to do is I want to take this out of here and show you what the inside of this valve looks like for reference. Now, when you take a gate valve apart, you're going to have to get it somewhere between the fully open and the fully closed position, in the neutral position, to back it off, because as you start to screw the stem out, the gate, will actually go up or down, and sometimes you'll get it stuck. So what we'll do is we'll see if we can open our wrench here, and we'll start to, I have this in the neutral position. Now let me see what happens here. Sometimes it'll start. You see now it stopped. Doesn't turn anymore. Doesn't turn anymore. Now what I'll do is I'll start to turn this. See, I'm turning it in, and look, see, it's starting to come off. Now it stopped again. So I'll turn it in. So actually the gate is going down and it's backing off. I'll turn it. I'll turn it. and it's backing off, and eventually it'll come out. It stopped again. Okay, so I'm gonna go again, and here we go. So, and here we go. Here is that gate. And bear this in mind. I mean, when you do put this back in again, I recommend putting some pipe joint compound on here. Or I will even take some Teflon off my roll, my Teflon tape. I don't put it on the threads. I kind of roll it in between my hands, and I will put that 1 or 2 rounds right up against the flat. And that'll seal. This is like a ground joint. It's supposed to seal without anything on it. On the other hand, you're going to find valves have washers here. They have fiber washers. They have rubber washers. It's going to depend on the valve, who the manufacturer is. But a valve like this is a pretty decently made valve. And that's what I would call a ground joint, if you will. But I still would put my pipe joint compound, my Megalock. I'd put a round or 2 of Teflon tape. Not this. I mean, you could. It's going to smush out. And that's what I would do. You want to make sure you put some kind of a sealing agent on this bonnet before you shove it back. But anyway, here's the gate. And this gate, see, I'm turning the valve here. The gate comes out. Now, I will tell you from experience that on water mains in particular, these gates sit in there. On a water main, it typically is in the open position for years and years and years and years and years. And then the plumber comes in, such as myself, and I go to shut the water off because I'm working upstairs on something. I shut it off, I do my repair, and then I go to open it, and lo and behold, what happens? Well, I'm going to tell you what happens. This gate remains in the closed position, and this here, somewhere along here, this stem is generally pitted and rotted, and it snaps off. So now I attempt to turn the water back on for the customer, and the stem snaps, and now the gate is in the closed position. Now what do you do? Well, now you're up S's Creek, so to speak, unless you have enough of water main sticking out of the wall, meaning whether it's copper or lead. I mean, if you have 24 inches, 36 inches of lead that's sticking out of the wall ahead, ahead of the valve, what I did in the good old days is I froze that line. I then took apart the valve, and in some cases I yanked the gate out, put the bonnet back. But where I can, when I can, I change the valve. So I will freeze the pipe here. I'm talking about back. I'm going back 24 inches or so. And in my day, I used to do it with dry ice. Today they make freezing machines. They have components whereby you could freeze the valve, or freeze the water line, excuse me, and then go do what you got to do. I've often changed valves on the fly. If it was a lead water main, I've actually just took the valve off. If it was an unfinished basement and I had a sewer right in front of me and I could knock the covers off, I just real quickly took the valve off, unscrewed the valve, and as I'm unscrewing the valve, the water is just like pouring all over the place. I'm taking a bath, and there you can see the gate is stuck in there. So that's pretty much it on gate valves. That's how they work. And let's see if I can get this back together for you. With that said, I'm going to jump into we'll jump into a globe valve. Now, globe valves you're not going to find on water mains, or at least you shouldn't find on water mains, because that's not a place to put a valve that uses a washer. They're usually point of use valves. You'll find them under sinks, etc. So with that being said, so there's your gate. Now, as far as the packing goes and the leaking from the stem, this is going to apply to a globe valve. So I'm not going to go through the steps again to pack it. I just want to bring the globe valve up, show you the differences, because a globe valve is not full flow. A globe valve by nature is restrictive. And then we'll jump into a ball valve, and then I'll go over real quickly a point of use valve, or a speedway valve, or a speedy valve, if you will. Stick around. All right, guys, a globe valve. As far as the packing story goes, so again, if you're the first one to come and turn this, it's probably going to start dripping out of the packing nut here. So the initial step would be to go in there, get your opening wrench, your pipe wrench, whatever the case may be. Eighth of a turn, quarter turn, half turn. If not, you're going to have to back off the packing nut and go through the steps of packing it, repacking it, either with your Teflon or with your graphite. Again, I'm a graphite type of guy myself, but whatever floats your boat works. I just want to take this valve apart now to show you. A globe valve uses a washer. This is typical. It has a seat inside of it. And essentially, remember what I was telling you about a washer? If you can look down in there, there's a nylon washer. This is a deep bonnet here. So on this end here, on the right side here, you got to see there's a washer down there. So that seals between here and the inside of the valve. Some of them have, some of them don't. The cheaper valves use these washers. Some of them are fiber washers. This one's nylon. Anyway, there's your washer. So the difference between a globe valve and a gate valve, essentially, I mean, a globe valve is full port. You got to get full flow. And a gate valve can be put on in either direction. You know, up, down, left, right, whatever the case may be, because it's full flow. You don't have to worry about the direction of the water. Unlike my globe valve over here. And if you take a look at this globe valve, or any globe valve, this globe valve has an arrow on it. And that arrow is showing you the direction of the flow. And that's the way it has to be put in. I mean, could you put it in backwards? Yeah. You shouldn't. I mean, it's bad enough that it restricts the flow initially, so why put it in backwards? But anyway, if you take a look, let me get this out of the way here. Take a look inside this valve, and you can see the water enters below. It enters on the bottom. So the water goes in the bottom of the valve, comes up through that integral seat where the washer sits on top of, and then exits at the top. So you got a little flow restriction going on. Comes in, goes through the seat, comes up, goes out. So it's kind of a zigzag thing going on. So globe valves, generally, you're going to use them, or you'll see them at point of use, meaning at the sinks, under the kitchen. Typically, you find them under kitchen sink cabinets. Maybe you'll find them on water supplies to boilers. You really shouldn't find them on risers to fixtures, although I've seen them. And that's pretty much it. They use a washer. And if that washer gets hard, gets worn, or that seat gets compromised, the valve will pass water. Generally, if the seats are in good condition, you can replace that washer with a new rubber washer, and that should solve your problem if the valve is passing water. Putting the valve back together is kind of similar to like a gate valve. I will leave it open. Actually, I will open this all the way, leave it in the all the way open position. And then you could tighten this all the way down so that that nylon washer hits up against the valve. Then you'll come in and make your final tightening. You'll whack that up until you're happy with it. And then after you got that done, you leave this in the neutral position or in the fully open position. Go back and forth, and while you're doing that, tighten up this tighten up this packing nut to make sure that there is some resistance on the stem. You don't want this to be like really, really loose. You want a little resistance in there. On the other hand, you don't want it so tight that you can't turn it. But I am on the side of a little more stiffness as opposed to looseness. So I will whack these up to where I'm getting a little resistance here. And then, you know, whatever the case may be, I mean, you leave them generally, they're in the fully open position. So that is a globe valve. And the next valve I'll talk about is a ball valve, which is the way to go, in my opinion, in today's world. All right, what we have here is the almighty ball valve. At least that's what I use today. I very rarely use gate valves. I certainly don't use globe valves. And pretty much there's a stainless steel ball inside of here. And on each end, on either end, there is a series of nylon seats that ball rides up against. And it's a full port valve. I'll show you the inside of it in a second. So this would be fully on. This would be fully off. And believe it or not, these also, at least this particular company, has a packing nut on it. Now, it's rare that you would turn a ball valve and get a leak out of the packing nut, but it can happen. And when it does happen, you have this little packing nut here. And you could, again, initially, first step would be, as with the gate valve and the globe valve, is to come in here with your adjustable, again, or pipe wrench, and try to snug it up to get the water to stop dripping. If it doesn't stop dripping, you can actually back this out all the way. And I will take this up here and show you that there is some room in here for you to put some either graphite or Teflon. And if you can see inside here, there is a nylon washer in there. So there's a little bit of a backup washer in there. But initially, I would try the tightening trick. If not, you come in and very sparingly get your Teflon packing or your graphite. Again, I'm a graphite type of guy. You want to put this on in a clockwise fashion. Whenever you're packing a packing nut or a valve, you want to put it on in a clockwise fashion so that when you tighten this nut up, it actually will squeeze into the cavity. If you put it in backwards, it's liable to squish out. So there is that stainless steel ball I was talking about inside the valve. And again, these can be put on in either direction. You don't have to worry about the direction of the water flow. And pretty much once we get this handle on here, and I will go a quarter of a turn up, and now the valve is in the fully open position. You can see it's fully open. So ball valves, in my opinion, are the way to go. Wherever you're going to put them. Point of use, at the base of risers, branch lines. I think these are a preferred method, and that's what I do in today's world. So let's just take a look at one more valve, which is the speedway valves, which you'll typically find underneath their bathroom sinks, toilets, and sometimes under your kitchen sinks. All right, finally we got the speedy valve, speedway valve, whatever you guys call them out there in the field. And same type of situation. They're sitting underneath the bathroom sink, the kitchen sink, the toilet bowl. And generally what happens is the first guy that comes and turns these, the water starts to leak out of the packing nut here. Now, some valves are manufactured better than others. This has actually is made out of plastic, if you will. You know, on the one hand, people say, oh, it's plastic, it's a piece of garbage. On the other hand, the water conditions pretty much don't affect it. So If you have a brass component in here, that's all brass and metal. If you have like really lousy water, it could be an issue. But again, if you go to shut this and it starts to drip out of the packing nut, again, plan A is to go in there with your adjustable wrench, and these things will typically make up quite a bit. You can whack these up pretty hard to get them to stop, but if it does not stop, then in a case where you have to take a valve apart, whether it be a gate valve, a globe valve, or a ball valve, you're going to have to shut off the water supply. So you're going to shut off your water supply at the meter, at the front wall, wherever that may be. My recommendation is to open up a fixture at the highest point in the house, and then open up a sink at the lowest point in the house, so you're letting air in so all the water in the system can drain down. Got to completely drain down. So after you turn your water off, go upstairs or open up the sink at the lowest point, then go upstairs to the highest point. Open up the faucets in the bathroom, in the kitchen. Let all the water drain out of the system. When that water is completely drained out and you don't see any water leaking out of that low fixture that you opened, then you can proceed to take this valve apart. With that in mind, again, you'll get your pipe wrench or adjustable wrench and you'll back off this packing nut here. And you want to, again, put this in the neutral position, somewhere between halfway on and halfway off. Or, if you prefer, all the way in the open position, and then you can back this nut off. And these typically, there you can see, and actually on this one, believe it or not, I believe actually the washer is missing from there. So this must have been a valve I had on the shelf upstairs, and the washer popped off. But they don't even use screws to hold the washer on. They just, it's like you pop it on there. You could actually pop the washer over this expanded tip, and it'll keep the washer in there. But anyway, let's just make believe the washer's on there and you're looking to pack it. So there is a nylon backup washer that sits up against the body here. And we'll take the handle off. We'll take this handle off. And the handle's even plastic. How do you like that? And if you can see here, you see there's a rubber washer on there. So this rubber washer sits up against the nylon washer. And again, if you tighten that and you whacked up that packing nut all the way and it still didn't stop leaking, what you can do is, or at least what I would do is, if this rubber washer is in some kind of decent shape, meaning it's still pliable, in between the rubber washer and that nylon washer, that it actually keeps the packing from going into the valve body. Again, you can start. You'll put one round on here, go around clockwise, and then what you can do is, slide the washer up against here. And after you snip it off, then you can proceed to put this on here and start to tighten it. And by building it up little by little, you will eventually get this to stop. Now, in some cases, there isn't a rubber washer in here. There's a fiber washer, which gets all dried up and it cracks and it breaks, in which case, you can come in here and just build this up. Build it up with Teflon, or if it was me, I use the graphite. So again, you would snip this off, start to tighten the packing nut until it gets snug. You'll go through the motions of turning this on and off. You're kind of going back and forth as you're tightening the packing nut to feel for the stiffness. And once you get it into that sweet spot, so to speak, where you feel it's not too loose, not too tight, it's just right, you're pretty much done. At that point, you can put the valve back together again and tighten everything up. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go upstairs to that uppermost fixture that you opened, make sure it's shut. shut the fixture downstairs, and then proceed to open up the water. Actually, what I tell people to do is leave the fixture at the highest point open. So as the water starts to fill up into the system, you're pushing the air out of the uppermost fixture. This way you'll minimize the banging you're going to get, or that little rush of air you'll get when you open up the fixtures after you just had the main water off. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's my speech on how to get a packing nut to stop leaking. And we went over the gate valve, we went over the globe valve, we went over the ball valve, and finally we went over the point of use valve. Guys, I hope you got a little value out of this video. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, by all means, please subscribe. You may want to keep an eye out to the right. You'll see a video pop up. One of them I chose, one of them YouTube chose. If you stayed all the way to this point, I appreciate you. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing all you guys in my next video. And as always, stay well, but more importantly, happy plumbing.